Happy summer. Oh wait, it's not summer till Thursday. But today we expect 97 degrees, right? And that dreaded St. Louis word, humidity. Actually, the first day of summer, they're saying it's going to be in the low 80s and dry. Go figure. There are the hot days and the cooler days, the dry days and the humid, the rainy days and the sunny. And whether or not it says it by temperature, it's still spring these last few days. And it is what it is, right? Even though some harbor the expectation that it should still feel like spring, now, still. But actually it feels like summer, and this Thursday will feel like spring. Somehow it all works together to make this beautiful piece of earth what it is. On this Father's Day morning, the gift Jesus gives our dads, and all of us really, is that he walks us over to the windows of our chapel and the windows of our home. He walks us over to the window and he tells us to look out there. Look around you, out there. 3 times in the last 2 weeks, I had the occasion to be driving through and even walking through vast acres of growing corn. You don't have to go very far in the Midwest to see corn corn, there you go, right there. I worked on that. I put a long symbol over every O in the word corn. Right now, the corn is not quite as high as an elephant's eye. Do you know what musical that's from? Very good. I knew that. But the corn is about waist high now, and it's a deep, deep green out there. As far as I could see, it was growing. As far as I could see, it was growing, this corn. But absolutely imperceptible to me. Silently, deep within, it was always and is still and right now growing. And it was all where it needs to be, in the process. It's doing what it does. Doing what it does. First comes the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. And Jesus turns to us and he says, if you want to understand life, if you want to understand relationships, and if you want us to understand family life in particular, that's where you're going to learn it. Right out there with all those growing things, those fields of corn, those trees. They have so much to tell us about what it means to raise humans. First, Jesus calls our attention to the mysterious way seeds sprout and grow, that something so tiny can give rise to something so huge itself suggests divine activity. There's something divine at the heart of this mystery called growing, something truly divine. After sowing, the farmer really has little more to do with the harvest until the harvest. As Jesus says, through it all, the seed will sprout and grow, and he knows not how. What is this mystery called growing? Jesus says to us as he looks out that window, everything sprouts and grows. We see it happening with our own eyes, but we can't wrap our brain around this mystery at the heart of things. In other words, dads, you might think you have great power to screw your kids up. You might worry that in some way or another you are leaving them a bit damaged, and you probably are. You worry that they might have learned from the worst in you, and every once in a while you look at them and you see yourself in them and you go, oh my God, what did I do? The truth is, as you look out that window, the truth is, as you look at those fields of corn, the truth is you don't have that kind of power. You might think you do, you don't. You don't have the power to screw them up, ultimately. That seed of love is in them, and no matter what you do or don't do, it will grow. It will grow like a flowering in the cracks of a sidewalk. Raising humans make mistakes. They do some damage, but in the end, we don't have the power. We don't have the power to ultimately screw them up. We don't have that kind of power because of this mystery in them called growing that is divine activity, not yours. You can't make them grow. You can't make them not grow. Then Jesus tells us, notice how once the seed is planted, as I said, the farmer has little more to do until the harvest. Once the seed has been planted, the farmer lets the seed do its thing. He or she knows how to step back when it's important to let that life become its own life, different from us, to work out its way in this world, to find out who they are and what they can become on their own. We who are moms and dads, friends, grandparents, priests, we want to place ourselves at the center of their story. We want to be the sower. We long to do something to help that seed to grow. If each of us could, we would force the seed's growth by strength of our will, making them make right choices, and risking ruining that seed in the process. There's something in us that wants to act. Something in us compels us to want to play an active role in what will happen. We want to force it to do the right things, at least what we think are the right things. We want to make it happen faster. We want our kids to act like adults and be adults when they've barely had the chance to be who they are at each stage along the way, at each stage, age appropriate. I do it all the time with college kids, and some of you have been victims of that. I expect you at 18 to have the wisdom of a 60-year-old. I expect you to have the freedom of choice and discipline of appetites and desires that hopefully 60-year-olds have. Don't put a Ted Drewes in front of me. You'll see me as weak. We just get so impatient with each other, don't we? The farmer cannot afford to be impatient. The farmer is our teacher. He can't afford to be impatient with the growing of the plant. He has to let it be what it is as it is along the way. Neither can we humans. We humans cannot be impatient with our own growth or with our children's growth. Jesus is saying to be impatient is to have a limited perspective. We will kill ourselves with pressure if we think we have to get a harvest the same day we plant the seed. We will kill ourselves with pressure if we think we have to get a harvest the same day we plant the seed. First comes the blade, then the ear, and then the full grain in the ear. Yes, Jesus says to us, the growing season will be fraught with danger. There are so many things that can become an enemy to the growing. And yet, despite all those enemies and all those opponents, the growth will come to pass. The growth will come to pass. The work of God will succeed. It will bear fruit. And in the end, a rich harvest will be produced. Will be produced. There's no stopping this growing. This is unstoppable growth. And make no mistake about it, Growth is happening. It's imperceptible to you, but it's happening. There's no one moment I can look at that corn stalk or that oak tree and say, yeah, it grew just right there in front of my eyes. But you and I know we can measure it over years. And over months and years, you begin to see that it really is growing, unseen. On any given day, we may not discern it. It looks today like it did yesterday, but the truth is, imperceptible though it be, growth is happening. So dads, quit worrying so much about your kids. If you're looking out the window at those rows of corn and those huge oak trees out there, you will know you don't need to worry about the oak tree or those rows of corn. They will do what they do as they do it when they do it. There's a power far bigger than yourselves, dads. And this goes for all of us who have any influence in anyone's life. There's a power far bigger than ourselves, which is doing the growing. Do you trust that? That's an enormous act of faith, but it's what Jesus says clearly in this gospel. First, he said, comes the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. Jesus has demonstrated to us what loving another human being, and most especially our kids, can look like. But what about us? What about you and what about me? Can you and I see, can we see that the way Jesus would have us live our own life is with trust in the world that growth is happening and will not be stopped? And it's not just what we need to keep in mind in loving them, it's also something we need to keep in mind in loving ourselves. Our mistakes, our sins, our failures, our addictions, our weaknesses, our imperfections, nothing can stop the power and the law of growing, this divine activity inside of us that is helping us, that created our being, but also our becoming. And this is good news for you and for me. This is good news. Nothing we do, think, say, did, ever, who have been, nothing can stop our growing. That's also something we keep in mind, we need to keep in mind. The love that was planted in you and in me is growing, imperceptible to us for sure. It's not very available to us in a moment. It's only in hindsight that we see the rings that have grown on the tree of our lives. We're growing. You and I, we're growing right now. We're growing, becoming everything we can be. The power of divine activity is happening in us. We're growing no matter the setbacks, the seasons, the imperfections, as I said. There's no stopping this. And you and I can trust. We can trust in the promise of the power of grace to do this. This is a fundamental optimism. A fundamental optimism about life and about human nature. About your kids and your grandkids and your friends and yourself. A fundamental optimism about our futures because of the life force planted in us that is ever emerging, becoming everything they and we are meant to be. And let it be true for us too, and let us see it every time we look in the mirror. This is a process, and every stage belongs. First the blade for us, then the ear for us, and then the full grain in the ear for us. What you see out that window, it won't let you give up on your children ever, ever. And what you will see when you look out the window will not let you give up on yourselves either, ever. Growth is a mystery, and growth is inexorable. It's relentless, unstoppable. Dads, your job was to plant the seed of love in your children, in us, and then look on and wonder at God, as God brings it to fruition. Father's Day is a day for just such wonder.